Welcome to Expert to Classroom, Mental Health. Each week, we start with an outline of our time together, and then we go ahead and do a little check-in before we enter a brief, less than 10-minute presentation. Then it's followed by an activity of a review of the academic calendar and semester tasks, as well as a teaching challenge for you to do on your own. And last, we follow it up with an exit ticket to provide us feedback on how to make this particular learning experience better. Let's start with our check-in for the week. As usual, we have 2 discussion prompts. The first one we're going to call Long Weekend. And this prompt is for you to imagine a long weekend is coming up. And what would be one thing you could do for enjoyment? Our second prompt is going to be called Ah. And this is to have you name one project or task that is of significant stress to you right now, and how long will this be stressful? Take a few moments to think about your response, and then feel free to write down and reflect that, or if you are using our Google form, complete that question in there as well. One of the reasons we're asking this question is that we're asking individuals to kind of be able to look towards activities that might be in the future, that might be positive, things that would give them joy. The other piece to it is to have a call to action about the stress in people's lives and where they can see the stress being and how long it's going to last. These types of questions are going to not only give you an immediate answer, but also allow you to have a little bit more insight into the state of colleagues, fellow friends, and students. As we move into the next section of the presentation, we wanted to make sure before we get started, no one will ask you to jump into a situation you are uncomfortable with, but how to support and direct students is paramount to our roles as educators. So asking yourself the questions of, how do I help a student struggling or need assistance? Where do I direct them? And who can I talk to if I need help? These types of questions are going to help you determine how you're going to support your students. And if you can think about them ahead of time, when things that are uncomfortable or you're unfamiliar with, you're going to be able to have a sense of having some type of canned response or something that just makes it a little bit easier and not such a surprise or something that makes it difficult for you to interact with a student. For our first slide, we're going to take a look at some statistics prepared for by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration of Rockville, Maryland, and the 2022 The State of Mental Health in America from MHA, Mental Health America. If you take a few moments to read the information provided on the screen, but I'm also going to go ahead and read them. One of the statistics, number of U.S. adults with mental illness in the United States identified as 50 million. Major depression is one of the most common mental illnesses. The percent of adults with mental illness who did not receive any mental health treatment is 56%. Based on the number with mental illness, percentage of adults with mental illness who report they try and can't get treatment is 24.7% or 12.2 million. Anxiety disorders are among the most common mental illnesses in America. 10.6 or over 2.5 million youth in the U.S. have severe major depression. This rate was highest amongst youth who identify as more than one race at 14.5%. The percentage of Asian Americans with mental illness, 15%. The percent of Latinx Hispanic Americans with mental illness, 16%. Percentage of individuals who identify as LGBTQIA+ with mental illness, 39%. Why we bring the statistics up is to give you some concrete information about the population that is out there, that you have some understanding or factual information about what is happening around mental illness in this country. From this, we can also identify that we're going to be able to see students in our classrooms, our colleagues, friends, family, anyone. When we see this, it's not so shocking if people are struggling. People are struggling. And so this is kind of a good indicator just to let you know to have some information in your back pocket. What we are going to do next is we're going to move on to resources that are going to be at STCC to help you as a faculty member or staff. One of the key components to providing support to students is to know resources available to them. As we've mentioned, many of us are not skilled counselors or therapists, and sometimes being able to direct students to these resources and being supportive is the best support you can provide. So let's take a moment to look at the various resources available. The first resource that we're going to share is the Mental Health and Support and Resources page that is located on the STIC website. This page is going to provide you information about crisis services, individual therapy, mental health resources for BIPOC students, mental health resources for LGBTQIA students, and financial hardship resources. Please take a moment to read through this page when you get a chance to be familiar with this particular resource available to students. Another thing that is available is bystander intervention training. This resource is what is bystander intervention training. Bystander intervention is about making choices to intervene or stop or prevent violence from happening to others. Bystander intervention is based on the idea that each of us as individuals have a role to play in preventing sexual and relationship violence. When each of us do a small part, all of our individual actions combine together to contribute to a safe and supportive campus for all. If you are interested in learning more about bystander intervention training, if you are interested in having a training for your class or your department or colleagues, staff, please feel free to research this page and contact Cindy Bruning if you have any questions. Throughout the last few semesters, I know that deans and student affairs have provided information about reporting options for faculty when there is a concern for a student. The reporting options page is broken into general incident, academic dishonesty, and share a concern. Take a few moments to read through this page. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact Student Affairs or your department, division, or dean. The SAFE Project is also another resource available to assist and support students and staff experiencing domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. This particular page outlines the coordinated community response team and the various components of prevention, conduct, victim services, and law enforcement. Additionally, domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking resources are available, as well as information about the campus advocacy, and then also a confidential and non-confidential reporting resources PDF, and then also a response sheet for Compassionate Connections if you would like to have some more information about that. This page does have a series of information about who people can talk to, and then the pull-down menu will give you more information. And these are the resources, some of the resources that are going to be able to help you have a better understanding of what support is available to students. Now, one of the reasons that we bring up many of the topics is that mental health is always impacted by our life circumstances, situational experience. And so knowing that there are resources depending on a particular situation, you can know that they have a lot of resources out there. Additionally, as always, do not forget that we also have the Center for Access Services, CAS, that also would be able to support with students who are having mental health issues due to financial concerns around housing or food insecurities, other things like that as well. The next thing that we're going to talk about is how to improve social support networks. And this is going to come from the Canadian Mental Health Association of British Columbia. And in their wellness module activity, they actually talk about how research shows that social support networks provide important benefits for both physical and emotional health. They have been linked to the research about When dealing with stressful situations, people are often less likely to report stress-related health problems than when they feel they have support from others. Now, we're talking about mental health this week, so please be aware if someone is severely struggling and needs professional mental health. This is not necessarily that's what the previous slides were about, is trying to direct them to the appropriate party. But if you are looking for conversations with students, fellow colleagues, talking about just how to improve their social network, these would be some advice that are provided. So one of the other things about social support, which is the first one that I think is so appropriate, is don't be afraid to take social risks. One of the benefits of having been in the pandemic is that most of us are off our game on being socially present. And so it's also a great time to also not to be afraid to take social risks, to make connections, to meet new people, whether it's joining a club or getting involved in a new organization, but also something that maybe would relate to a community activity or something that you feel like is a skill set you need to improve on. At this time, it's probably in our best interest all to get out there a little bit more in some fashion to be able to make some connections and continue going on. The second thing is going to be about get more support from the support you have. We often assume that other people know what we will need, that our friends are attuned to who we are and what we need as friends. But one of the biggest things about making sure that you secure and continue your healthy social support network is to make sure that you tell individuals when you need more support from them. And then also, if they're not able to provide it, you can also reach out to your other friends to make sure that they're aware of it and find that support that you need. It goes into the third piece here, which is reaching out, is asking people you know to help broaden your network to their networks. So if you know that you have a friend who has a connection to someone, see if you can reach out to other people. Asking if there's anybody in the community that can introduce you on to a particular organization or a group, just putting yourself out there, but also trying to make connections with people using the networks that you already have. The fourth thing is going to be being a joiner. Sometimes the best way to find support that you need is through a support group. There are a lot of community organizations that are available, but also your primary care physician, local hospitals and community centers. There may be an actual support group that you feel you want to participate in, and feel free to try to join into something. So a formal support group, and not necessarily individual therapy, may also help with improving your social support network. Being patient. This is probably one of the biggest things, is that it always takes time to build friendships, and it doesn't matter if you're 5 or 15 or 50. Building trust, making connections, it takes time. And especially since, again, we've all been kind of out of the practice of social networking and taking social risks, is to be aware that putting yourself out there is going to be patient. All of these things are really great to have conversations with students, even in a first few minutes of the class or a last few minutes of a class, or if somebody's really struggling, is to kind of talk over some of these things and see where they're at. If they're, just having a hard time getting connected to the campus or their experience, or feeling a little out of it, some of these components might be a really great conversation starter for them. And then you can direct them to other resources that are available through the campus or community. The last two things are going to be to avoid negative relationships. One of the things about building a positive social network is to make sure that you're not going to add any undue stress or necessary stress by having negative relationships in your life. A lot of times you don't even realize it's happening, but when you do recognize it, to do your best to remove yourself from any situations that have a negative outcome to your life. And then the last thing is, I think, incredibly important, which is take care of your relationships that you already currently have. Remember that it's a two-way street, or it's a cul-de-sac of many turns, but we always know that we do have our friends in our lives, and in order for you to have good friends, you have to be a good friend. And so remember that there are ebb and flows to all friendships, but taking the time to make the time for your friendships is incredibly important on improving your social support networks. Now, with all of that in mind and what we've said about, is we're going to jump into the first activity, which is brainstorming. Now, Brainstorming actually has some rules to it, and I'm just really simply going to go over this. When you are doing a brainstorming activity, there is kind of a no, it's a and but no but. So when someone gives an idea or you're putting something down, do not diminish it. Do not give the reason why it would not work. A true brainstorming session really is about putting the ideas and kind of just generating everything you can think of, and nothing get kicks out. So if for these questions you think, well, that doesn't really happen, doesn't really matter. The act of brainstorming is to come up and try to just expand your thoughts and your processes, and not to have any kind of confrontation or limitations to the ideas that come up. So the first brainstorming question we're going to have is, what are significant forms of stress in your professional workspace for your field? For many of you, you are working in technical or health fields. If you are working in other disciplines, what is the type of work that your students might be experiencing? If you're a teacher, what are the things that are happening in your daily practice that are considered to be professional work stresses to you? Then the second thing that you should brainstorm, kind of take this question and doodle down as many ideas as you can, is, what are the significant forms of stress for your students? In general, not given any time of the semester, just in general, brainstorm what are all the significant forms or any forms of stress for your students. So once you've brainstormed those two ideas, we'll move on to the second part of the activity. So the second part, or activity 2, student-centered solutions, is from those two brainstorming sessions, generate a list of ideas that you can incorporate into your teaching, classes, online course shells, or interactions to address the concerns provided in the previous activity. Now, the reason that we focused on your professional experiences is that often you also want to prepare students for the experience of being in the workforce in your particular discipline. So understanding that there are stressors there, especially when you're talking about mental health or stress-related issues, is really to just acknowledge that these are components of the workday and how do they manage them. Giving them some insight into how you manage them is really very helpful for them to understand that it's possible to manage them and that sometimes it's really hard to manage them. Then also, again, recognizing that students have a stress on top of that is related to their academics, is what are those things that you can incorporate into your brainstorming that are little things that may change or support your students. So take a few moments to generate your list of ideas. Maybe think about what you could do the first day of class, what you could do at the end of the semester, what you maybe could do midterm. Just brainstorm also some ideas of how you could incorporate these things. And I would really encourage you to think about your interactions, actual physical activities you could do, those kind of things as well. Having completed all this, we're going to do our quick overview of the academic calendar semester tasks. And as you see, we're slowly checking off everything. And so we've been moving into midterm examinations, spring teaching assignments, but the new topic in this area is going to be talking about advising. And as always, we're going to really encourage you that if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about advising, to speak with fellow colleagues, speak with your department or division chair, talk to your dean, or also reach out to our advising staff as well if you have questions, comments, or concerns. And as always, we're going to offer you a teaching challenge, which is our weekly opportunity to do something new in the classroom. This week's challenge comes from page 69, which talks about sharing stress management ideas with students. So some examples are listed in the 33 Strategies book on page 69, and there will be other additional resources available through this presentation throughout the week. And this concludes our presentation for the week for Expert to Classroom Mental Health. Thank you.